Regularly scheduled program will not be seen today so that we can bring you this special presentation.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's a two for day, I guess, as we are back with another episode of WrestleChat. This was not scheduled, and I was actually planning on touching on this subject earlier, and I got sidetracked and I forgot to mention it. I know a lot of you guys don't really care too much about what's happening in the world news, don't pay attention to it. I get it. But I do, and this is one of those stories that you're not going to be able to ignore. If you're not already familiar, I'll get you up to speed here as quick as I can, and that is that America apparently played some role in the recent execution of one of the top drug lords in Mexico. We still don't have all the details, but what we do know is Mexican crime lords have decided to fight back, and they are taking over cities. Mexico is a war zone right now. There are a lot of battles taking place. There are a lot of fires. There are a lot of buildings being damaged. And there are a lot of Americans that were on vacation that are now stuck. They are in a position. Right before I went on, I read something, and that's my mistake for reading the internet and believing it without doing more research, which I did since. But the report that I had read was that they are actually holding Americans hostage. Nobody has confirmed that at this time. What we do know, and we're going to actually take a look here in just a second at a Fox News recent report, and I'm saying recent as in the last couple of hours. Things change quickly in moments like this. And the reason we're covering it here on this show is because, again, Mexico, AAA Wrestling, WWE, it all ties together. Of course, right now, the bigger issue is the human factor and what's happening in Mexico, what's happening with the people that live there, and what's happening with the Americans who went there on vacation and who are now being told they have to stay in their condos, in their hotel rooms, do not leave. There's obvious reason. Number one, there is no current travel in Mexico. There's no airlines going in or out. Airports are all closed. There's no travel on the roads. There's no going through the borders. You are now in Mexico. You are staying in Mexico until further notice. At the same time, my concerns personally is as this thing escalates, these drug lords have nothing left to lose. They've run roughshod for so long, and they've done whatever they want. And now all of a sudden they are being destroyed, physically destroyed. If you have nothing left to lose, then you're going to go after hostages. I just see that as being next. And these poor folks are pretty much held up in condos and rented apartments and things of that nature. they're sitting ducks. So hopefully they'll be all fine. We're going to take a quick look here in just a second at what Fox had to say about this.
Our regularly
After I fix. That's not it. Give us a second. There we go.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
The U.S. State Department is telling Americans in Mexico to shelter in place as law enforcement tries to regain control of cities that have fallen into chaos in the hands of the Mexican cartels. This is after the Mexican military took out a notorious cartel kingpin with U.S. support. And we're learning a little bit more about our role in all of that. Not a lot of detail, but we had one. The carnage, cars torched, roads blocked, banks and local businesses set on fire as those cartels are now fighting for power. It's like everybody else is in the middle of a gang war right now. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Campagno, and also joining us, Tomi Lahren, co-host of The Big Weekend Show and host of Tomi Lahren is Fearless on Outkick. Cheryl Casoni, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business. And Griff Jenkins is with us, co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend. Mexico's most wanted drug lord, known as El Mencho, was killed in a U.S.-backed military raid. He founded a vast criminal network which has the highest cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine trafficking capacity in Mexico.
It's not just me.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt applauded the move. And here's what she wrote. El Mencho was a top target for the Mexican and U.S. government as one of the top traffickers of fentanyl. President Trump has been very clear the U.S. will ensure narco-terrorists sending deadly drugs to our homeland are forced to face the wrath of justice they have long deserved. Former Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb joined me last hour on the Faulkner Focus.
This is exactly what they're doing in Puerto Vallarta. What they are doing is burning buses, lighting gas stations on fire because they want to create terror for those who struck a nerve. This will create compression amongst those other cartels. We may see more violence stem from this, but what we're seeing right now is their capability for violence, and this should awake Americans up. This is why it's so important to close our borders.
The borders are essentially closed, and the drugs flowing across, Griff, have dwindled to nearly zero, thank goodness. Not quite there, but certainly the human trafficking. What is there for people on the left to catch on to at this point?
So this is a big deal, Harris, and it couldn't be a more dangerous time to be in Mexico because of what Sheriff Lamb was talking about. So a power vacuum was now created. El Mencho was the top trafficker of cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl coming across in the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Now, remember, last summer, El Mayo, who was the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, was taken. The U.S. captured him. It led to a spike in 400% increase in homicides in Mexico. Now we're going to see it even more so because Jalisco New Generation is the dominant cartel. And they're going to start retaliating now against Mexican officials because of this. And don't forget, for 4 years under the Biden administration, they lined their pockets with money. That's why you see these stunning videos of the cartel leaders in armored vehicles that rival U.S. military firepower. They're going to retaliate against the officials, but then they're going to fight the rival factions that are trying to fill El Mencho. And so it's really a lot of unanswered questions of really where and how they're going to retaliate against Mexican officials, and then the war that's going to go on with the cartel, which puts Americans stuck in Mexico at a very, very high risk.
Yeah, the list last night, Tommy, that some of us put out on social media of all the areas that were basically in lockdown, shelter in place, was pretty long. It wasn't just Jalisco and Puerto Vallarta and some of the other areas where we know Americans go, but it was a lot of different states within that country.
I think Americans need to understand something that doesn't feel comfortable, but anytime you as an American travel to Mexico, there is a limited amount of things that the American government can do for you there. Yes, they've put out the warnings. They said shelter in place. They can help you a little bit with the embassy. But when you decide to travel to Mexico, a lot of people think you go to a resort, you're going to be safe, nothing happens there. Well, I think they're finding out the hard way that that's not necessarily true. In 2017, a friend of mine from California was stabbed to death in Playa del Carmen. And that was just walking from bar to bar in a resort area. So I've been sounding the alarm on this for almost 10 years now, saying, if you're an American going to Mexico, have a great time, but understand the risks. And to the point about President Trump and his message, we saw it in the first administration, his message to Mexico was the threat of tariffs if the Mexican military doesn't do their part to secure the border. And then the Mexican military stepped up. Now we flash forward to administration 2.0. President Trump says, I'm not going to tolerate not only the human trafficking, but the drug trafficking. And now the Mexican military, once again, stepping up to do their part to secure their own country. That, in my opinion, is a direct response to President Trump and how tough he's been on this issue.
Talk to me about tariffs, because you knew we'd get there eventually, and Tommy got us there. You've got a new round coming, potentially, that the president and his staff have worked on to get beyond what the U.S. Supreme Court did. It sounds like, from what Tommy's saying, you may need those more immediately, particularly given the situation that's going on
a national security basis, which is the reason that he implemented those tariffs in the first place. Liberation Day, April of 2025. Fast forward to now. The steel and aluminum tariffs, by the way, are still in place. That's a separate issue than what the Supreme Court ruled on, and that is a big piece of it. Those are sectoral. Yes, like and Canada. That's why you've seen more and more auto manufacturing that is coming back into the United States. Again, is this a safety concern? Because before, the parts were going back. They were going from Canada to the U.S. down to Mexico and then back. Sometimes these components were going back in dollar industrial. To your point, production has really slowed down, in particular in the southern part, like in the Sonoran region. We've seen that. Still, this is not exactly a moment in time where the cartels are going to say, oh, we're just going to walk away from the billions of dollars. And by the way, they have crypto trading operations.
Neighbors who don't have the same drug trafficking and human trafficking and illicit types of data, statistics, and tracking that we do here in the States. The green gold of the avocado farms, the oil seizures. Those cartels have that entire country and its economics and ecosystem under a tight fist. And I'm worried that the news cycle covers this as Americans are in the danger that they are, but that it will go back to the thin veneer of safety that we've been enjoying as tourists for decades. We know that power vacuums beget violence and exploitation, and that's what's been happening this entire time. That's why there are those multiple factions, because back in the day, it used to just be one. Now Jalisco's on top, right? It didn't used to be like that, but this is what shifts. The last Mexican elections were the bloodiest of all time, and the amount of journalists that have been murdered, the amount of influencers on live streaming, the amount of targeted, what's the word I'm looking for, when the cartels are recruiting young people there. It starts at a very young age. They hold their families hostage. They have now music and pop culture influences for these kids. It is a reign of terror. And to think, by the way, that the government is somehow distinct from the cartels is a very naive and foolish way of thinking. They are deeply embedded, and I'm not quite sure what our next steps are diplomatically, but it requires a very complex and nuanced approach to this country and to those cartels. I think that takes years of investments. This is not just a current administration diplomatic solution.
It's such a great...
All right. That's the nuts and bolts of it. I'm not going to go on forever with this, but it's a serious situation right now. Jay's in the house. What's up, man? And the funny thing is, as much as I've been enjoying AAA, I've actually contemplated, would I want to go there to experience it? And in my mind, I was like, man, you're in another country and not a really good one to be in, especially as a white American. And I was like, man, as much as I would love to go there in person and experience the AAA show live, just didn't feel safe. And then this all starts happening. So my cousin got married there about a decade ago. She's been divorced already since, so that didn't work out well. And when she tells the family, oh, yeah, we're getting married in Mexico, I was like, well, have fun. I'm not going. A lot of my family went. I didn't go. My mom and dad didn't go. But damn, it hasn't been a safe country in as long as I've been around. This could lead to that changing, but no time soon. I feel right now, and if you're somebody who believes in prayer, pray for these Americans especially that are stuck there right now with no way of getting out. At some point in time, I've got to believe they're going to be targets. I don't want that to be true, but knowing how this type of humanity, and I use that word loosely, describing drug cartels, knowing how they operate, they have no value for human life, and they will put whatever shield between them and the next round of bombs that come in that they can. They're playing with the wrong person. I can assure you one thing. This administration will eradicate them. It's not a question of when, or not a question of how. It's more or less a question of when. It's going to happen. And the point that you just heard them making on the news brief about the fact that the government is so deeply embedded with the drug cartel, which they've always been. It's one of the most known corrupt systems and societies that exists on the planet, really. There's only maybe one or two others that are even in the same conversation. But I don't think anyone tops them. It's going to be interesting. So it's going to impact, like I said, the people that are there. It's going to impact the people that live there. It's going to be people that, again, Americans that are trapped there now that can't get out. So are they hostages at the moment that they're under gunfire or something to that effect, tied up? No, as it turns out, none of them actually have been used as hostages. They're still being held there against their will because there's no way out. And they've got to be so careful. I don't know what they can even do at this point to protect themselves more, because that when it comes to the cartels, they got their finger on the pulse of everything and everyone. And people working in these resorts, they're going to say, hey, you got a bunch of gringos in this room, this room, and this room. And then they just become targets if that comes down to it. And I really think that could be a reality. I'm hoping that we end up sending in one of those military super teams that has taken out people recently very quickly and effectively and efficiently, and hopefully they can get into these areas and somehow evacuate the Americans that are there. And after that, do what you got to do. But we got to take care of our own first. So that said, the way it ties into wrestling, of course, is the AAA factor. I got to imagine that their programming is going to be done for a while. I don't know how the WWE works around it. You're not going to send anyone from the WWE roster, as you have done recently, in. You're not going to send Ludwig Borger. You're not going to send Chad Gable. They're not going in. And that's one of your main stories. And how do you get guys like, Vikingo and Junior Vikingo and all that? How do you get them out? I don't see how that happens. I just don't. Undertaker's the producer. That's not going to happen. So it's going to definitely impact the wrestling world as well. But again, that's the small picture compared to the bigger picture. But it's worth covering here on WrestleChat. So I thought I would come on because 2 times in one day live isn't enough. I felt like I needed a third one. Oh, man. Scott W. in the house as well. Oh, Mexico's not dealt with it a long time ago, Scott, because they are dealing with it. They're all in bed together. To deal with it, your government would have to deal with it. Well, the government's part of the problem, so hence it's never going to get dealt with. Certainly the civilians aren't going to do anything about it because they don't have anywhere near the power. And as they mentioned in the report, our last administration was so kind enough as to give them so much money that they now have military-grade weapons. Joe Biden is the gift that just keeps on giving. Well, the good news, Jay, is they can't bring it into the borders anymore because the borders are closed. There is nothing getting across that border right now. Trump has done what he said he was going to do on a lot of things, and the border being the biggest one. Well, yeah, bring them to the states and run them in Texas and Arizona and things like that. That's a possibility, but how do you get them out? There's no travel. The airports are shut. They're done. There's no airports. There's no roadways. Everything is right now being shut down, and if you are out there, you're probably going to get shot. So how do you get them out? I mean, let's put it this way. If we could get them out to do a wrestling show, I like to think we can get the American citizens out there on vacation. But right now, everyone is being told, stay where you are. And this is not going to be something that ends in a day or two. I mean, I see this lasting unless, yeah, no, I can't see it. I just can't see it. It would only because of the sheer size, and size meaning number of the cartel. I mean, there are thousands upon thousands. This is such an intricate system that they have over there. And when you talk about networking, yeah, this is networking on steroids. I don't know that you could, it wouldn't be a single military strike. You would have to coordinate so many, and they would all have to be pretty damn near perfect. And then you've got to go and replace probably 80% of the government, including law enforcement, because they're all dirty. So that's a big hill to climb, man. I don't know how you climb that hill successfully. It'd be bad enough if it was our country and we had to deal with it, but you're talking about another person's country, and then they're not, really dealing with it so much. So anyway, Blaze, I was actually watching the highlight clips on YouTube, and I've seen a bunch of them, so I don't know which spoilers you're referring to. I saw Brock was the last thing I saw, was that they basically left an open challenge for Brock. But I hadn't gotten to see the AJ Styles thing yet, so I'm presuming he's not going to be retired. But I'll wait for the YouTube clip here in a little bit and catch up on it that way. So if there is a spoiler, maybe I could be surprised. It'd be nice nowadays to be a surprise somewhere along the lines in professional wrestling. They don't seem to do them very well lately. I saw the box in the back as well. All right, well, I'll check that out shortly then. I just, like I said, when I saw what was happening in Mexico, and I'd read something online that said that they took hostages. And then as I was putting this all together, and I pulled up the Fox report, they didn't mention it. And then I did another search on Google, and it said, as of this time, there are no known hostages taking place. So, of course, somebody on Twitter just jumped the gun. And, yeah. I still worry, though, that that's going to materialize in the near future. Hopefully I'm wrong. And, again, if you're somebody who has a faith-based background, then I suggest we all say a prayer for the families that are over there, that went there just to have a good time. Obviously, nobody has that option of going right now, and I think you're crazy if you try to anytime in the near future. Even if somehow, let's paint a rosy picture that in 3 weeks' time they managed to wipe out the cartel. There's still going to be people left behind that are going to say, that they won't be happy about that, even if they weren't directly involved with the cartel, that maybe it was their brother or their father or their whatever, and Americans took them out. So we still are not going to be safe to go there, because somebody's going to look at us as their enemy. So I certainly am not going to Mexico for any reason whatsoever. I'll stick around my red state of Florida and enjoy the view. And anyway, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to pop in and let you guys know. Because, again, I know a lot of people do not pay attention to world news, and I wish I could turn that off in my head. But I don't know. I feel like I got to know what I got to know. Oy. All right. Well, that's, I think, all I got on this one. So thank you guys for checking in. And, again, we like to do our weekly reports on AAA. I'm not sure. They might already have 1 or 2 weeks in the can, so maybe that will still happen. We'll have to find out. In the meantime, have a great rest of your night. Get some rest. If you're in the upper north, northeast especially, do whatever you can to stay warm. Just stay away from the goats and the sheep. That's not cool. But anything else, you got to do what you got to do. We'll see you guys real soon for some more here on the Nation Network with WrestleChat. Until then, so long.